And welcome into In Depth with Fox Carolina Sports. Hey there, I'm Aaron Cheslock. As we do each week, we talk to local coaches and athletes and follow their path to their particular point of their career. And the resume on our guest this week is about as long and as impressive as any we could imagine, and that is the head coach of the South Carolina Gamecocks men's basketball team, Frank Martin. Coach, appreciate the time. A lot I want to get to with you, but obviously, this past 6 or 8 months, the offseason, quite a roller coaster. Coming off the COVID season, of course, we'll get into some of those issues that were presented not just to you guys, but every team in the country. Speculation whether you'd be back. There was a long gap there. Season ended on March 11th. Almost a month of nothing, one way or the other. What was your mindset during that time? How do you reflect on it 6 months later?
Oh man, it's no one ever enjoys that quick window when the season ends, other than one team. It's we lost in a national semifinal game in 2017 to Gonzaga, and those next 2 weeks were miserable. There's a void. The season gets you to live under a certain set of with a sense of urgency and the level of attention that requires every day from a preparation and then a competition standpoint. And then from one day to the next, boom, it's over. And you don't really, unless you play in the national championship game, you don't control what day your season ends. You go into every day with the expectation of like, okay, we'll figure this one out and we'll practice again tomorrow. And then from one day to the next, it's over. And I don't care how you cut that cake. You never coach the same team twice. So it's the finality of that team being together to compete and grow and play games with. And so those couple weeks are never a whole lot of fun. And then there's always a lot of reflection. At least that's the way I do things. Once the season ends, I kind of decompress and then a lot of reflection as to when I say reflection, I'm not so much speaking about the players and the staff. I'm speaking about me, just reflecting back to my job, the way I managed it that year, the decisions I made, the good, the bad. Be as honest with myself as I can possibly be from an evaluation standpoint. So I can be at peace with the job I did. And I think in today's day and age, we spend too much time worrying about pleasing others through our work rather than being at peace with ourselves, with our ability to do our jobs the way that we need it to be done. And so I spent a lot of time doing that, and this year was no different. When
you think about the COVID year, you've been very public personally about the effect that COVID has had on you, testing positive twice, urging folks to take it seriously. We're now a year and a half into this pandemic. And of course, the numbers are fluctuating once again, getting set to have your third season potentially impacted by it. How would you characterize your concerns, not just for your team as a leader of young men, but for yourself as well?
Yeah, it's we can't act like this thing just disappeared. On the contrary, I think it's showing its ugly head once again. I just lost a dear friend yesterday morning that just passed away because of COVID, and it's the hardest thing to prepare for is the unknown. It's the most difficult thing that we can all deal with. I tell people all the time, you tell me I got to walk through a door, but to get through that room to the other side, there's a grizzly bear, and I got to go fight the grizzly bear. I'm not going to be excited about it, but at least I have a plan as to how I'm going to deal with the grizzly bear. But when you walk into a dark room and you have no idea what the challenge is going to be, that's uncomfortable. And that's kind of what we're dealing with right now. There's so much unknown that we got to keep our faith and keep our spirits in the right place. and live life. But we got to be careful. We can't act. It's one of the biggest things I speak to our players about right now is they still have to be careful with who they interact with on a campus full of students right now. They got to keep their distance. They can't be going to parties or, in the little bar neighborhood or whatever, just being a college student. You just can't do those things right now. I'm no different out of respect to my team. Now that everyone's back on campus, the days of me going into a restaurant with my family are going to be few and far between. I've got to be very careful with all that. But at the same time, we got to be excited about living life and doing the things that bring peace to us. And, we sign up for the coaching job and the players sign up for the playing jobs. And that's what brings us peace, is being in those roles and competing within those roles. And hopefully we can find inner peace now that the one thing we don't know is, will we be disrupted again? That's the unknown, and that's the part that's hard to control. But last year it was all new, so I probably didn't handle those things very well. This year I'm better prepared, and I just the one thing that's very important to me right now, and my family and my players, it's what I keep preaching to anyone I come across, is like, let's live life, but let's not act like this thing just disappeared. It's still there, and everyone's we continue to lose loved ones on a daily basis because of it.
Yeah, and I think the more coaches I talk to during this era, I think that's one of the things that strikes me the most is, having to not just manage your team that, you guys are such creatures of habit. Those are the things that you're used to, but also telling college kids that are, supposed to be living the time of their lives here, not to interact the way that they usually do is just such a natural thing. And I think that balance is, one of the toughest things that you guys are having to navigate coaching college sports in this era. So I don't think that's anything to thumb your nose at. On the court, you lose A.J. Lawson, had a bunch of guys transfer, get some familiar faces back, however, Keyshawn Bryant, Jermaine Cousinard. If my math's right, 9 new faces on the team this year. Does it feel like a fresh start?
I mean, kind of. We return the 2 guys that started at center for us, Wildens Levesque and Trayvon Minot. They come back. We obviously, Jermaine and Keyshawn have played a bunch of games for us and have been really good players and will continue to do so. But then everyone else is pretty much new. And the good thing is that some of the guys that transferred in are guys that we recruited pretty hard before. So there's already established relationships. And then one guy who is from Colombia, and I didn't recruit him before, but there was an established relationship, and this was it was always a dream of his to play at the University of Carolina, and he always wanted to play for me. I've been here long enough now where all these guys that are high school seniors kind of were little elementary school kids when I got here. So they actually sat around and James Reese is who I'm speaking about. He wanted me to be his coach, and he wanted to play at the University of South Carolina. And so there's a little familiarity, even though we've never been through a season together with 9 of those guys. And you also include my son in that. I think I understand him pretty good, and he understands me pretty good. But we've never been through a season together as a player coach. So there's some comfort between the people that are the new faces, but at the same time, we've never been to a season together. So there's one thing we can never do is you can never circumvent experience. There's only one way to gain it, and that's going through it. And we have to make sure that we manage things the right way. So we can understand each other as fast as possible, so then we can go out there and help one another best we can for those games. But I'm excited. I'm always excited in September. It's when everyone starts talking about opening football weekend, I love football, so I get to watch football, but that gets my juices going because I know we're really close to starting practice and shortly after that playing games.
Well, you can tell you're a pro at this. You've been doing this a long time because you segued right into my next question. One of those new faces, your son, Brandon, who we covered actually at USC Upstate. Know he's a good ball player there and certainly will add to your depth. But how do you balance the emotions of watching your son as a father play big-time SEC basketball while also making sure you stay locked into each play and the game in itself? I don't know if you've ever had that dual emotions before, if those worlds have collided. Is there any way you prep for that, or just once the ball gets tipped off, it's just we'll see what happens?
Yeah, it's I've talked to a lot of coaches that have coached their children at the collegiate level. There's a difference between coaching them at the collegiate level or the high school level. The reason being that in the high school level, kind of everybody makes the playoffs. So there's no sense of urgency for November and December. There is a sense of urgency, but it's not to the level that it is in college. In college, every day can either make or break your opportunity to play in the postseason. So it's a different animal from that standpoint. But I've talked to a lot of college guys to see how they managed those days with their children. But we're all different, and our kids are all different. Just because something works with one father-son doesn't. Heck, within our own family, our own children are different. I can't manage my oldest son Brandon the same way I manage my younger son Christian. They're two boys. Same set of rules as people as far as expectations in the house, but I manage them differently because they're different people. And so all I can do is take notes, communicate with them best I can. But there's going to be between 30, 35 days, 40 minutes each day where he's a player on a team and I'm his basketball coach. And during that moment, there's going to be a sense of urgency, responsibility, of respect to decisions, both that he will make as a player and I will make as a coach, that our faith in one another has to solidify those decisions to support one another. I think where things will be more personal for me, it's going to be at midnight when I'm sitting at home in the dark all by myself watching the game film. And and I realize that's my son playing against whatever. It's pretty neat. And then there's going to be days that he's not going to make a certain rotation defensively, and I'm not going to be real happy that he's my son that moment because I'm upset that he didn't do what I needed him to do. But at the end of the day, it's the reason we all get to sports, or we've been drug into sports, is because we understand how to live and grow through the lives of other people and coexist with others. And that's the beauty of sports. It's not, everybody wants to talk about the winning and losing. That's the petty part of sports. The real part of sports, for those of us that are in it, what keeps us in it, is that we continue to add value to our lives because of the people that we touch and that touch our lives and improve our lives. And when you get to do that with your own son, it's pretty neat.
I think that's certainly one of the cooler storylines going into this season for you guys. And as a new father myself, it's one that maybe I think is a little cooler than I would have 4 or 5 years ago, because I can just a snippet of what that must feel like for you. I'm a little envious, but it should be a lot of fun to watch. Now, the show is called In Depth, so we want to catch up on your backstory, and there's so much here, literally. So if you see a part where I'm flying through it and you want to add some color, feel free to cut me off. But again, I want to try to get to as much of this as I can. A Miami native, born to Cuban refugees in 1966. And among your jobs as a teenager, you worked at Dairy Queen, at a pool hall, a bunch of stuff in the restaurant business. And the one, of course, you're most famous for, a bouncer at a nightclub in college. Now, I read that there was an incident at a nightclub that you were bouncing at that actually was the catalyst, a kick in the rear, so to speak, that got you focused on coaching. And, I'm curious what happened there, as much as you're willing to share, and how did it put things in perspective for you that coaching was your calling?
Yeah, I mean, I started coaching at a young age. I quit school. I tore up my knee trying to make the team at Miami-Dade Community College, and no one in my family had ever attended college. I was the first one to attend college, so it's not like being in college was something that was important to me. So when I tore up my knee, I realized, okay, I'm not going to make the team, so I can't even play right now. So the heck with this. Let me go find jobs. So I started working. And about a year later, my high school coach, who I lost, who was our father figure in our neighborhood, he passed away in November, right at the beginning of this previous season. He called me in and he's like, "Hey, man, you got to go back to school." And it's the first and only time in my life I ever said no to him. I said, "No, I'm just going to go work and help my mother pay her bills." And he asked me, "Well, come by and help us coach, because, guys in the neighborhood respect you." And so I started coaching that day and fell in love with coaching that day. But I still had no desire to go back to school at the time. So I had to pay bills. So I had all those jobs you're speaking about. I was the change boy at the neighborhood pool hall when I was 12 years old. And it just continues. And that doesn't make me better or different. That's just the path I was on. And it's my mother never said you have to work. I just did it because I felt a sense of responsibility to help her. Who made me understand that? I don't really know. That's just my family. It's my grandmother left her husband behind in Cuba to leave a communist state that had changed right before her eyes. And this country gave her an opportunity, and she was a housewife in Cuba. She never had a wage-paying job, and she got to this country and she became, she sewed at a factory from sun up to sundown every day, just because she was proud to be here. And it's just kind of the way things worked out for me. But yeah, the bouncer part, it was fun. You get paid to socialize. Heck, when you're in your early 20s and mid 20s and you're in South Florida and you're single, heck, you're socializing anyways. If I can socialize and get paid for it, why not? And I worked at different places and you learn something everywhere. But my last full-time bouncing gig, the story you're alluding to was, we had a little issue inside the bar, and we put an end to it. But the people that we put out of the bar weren't real happy, and they waited. We didn't know they were waiting, but they were waiting in their cars in the parking lot. And once we shut the bar down and closed everything down and we walked outside, we saw a car coming. And it's when you live in that job and you live in that environment, your antennas are always up. You kind of have a feel for what nights are going to be okay and what nights are going to be a little bit complicated. And when we walked outside, we had our intent, me and the other two guys, we had our antennas up. We knew something might be going on. As soon as we saw the car coming, we figured that was the deal. And, luckily there was another car in front of us, but they shot, and that's not a fun experience. That's not a moment that, some people want to be brave. Like, yeah, I've been shot at, man. Ain't nothing brave about being shot at. That's not a very comfortable moment. And then the car drove away, and I went and got my car and drove home. And I realized, like, you know what? Is getting $150 a night worth this moment right now? I said, I need to figure out a way to finish my degree and coach for a living, because it's what I really, really enjoy doing. And that was a night that kind of changed the channel for me.
That's a remarkable story, and obviously one I wish you didn't have to go through to come to that realization. But boy, did it put you on quite the path. 1985, to 2000. You're a high school coach in Miami, 5 state championships on your resume. You reportedly wrote 120 plus letters to college coaches around the country looking to make a jump to the college level. Coach K, the only one that responded, did not offer you a job, however. The next year, you get a gig at Northeastern. That's a year-long wait of putting yourself out there and not getting the fulfillment of getting a job. I'm curious what your mindset was in that year, which in the grand scheme of things seems like a snippet in your life, but I can imagine when you're going through it, it seems like an eternity. Was it frustration? Was it self-doubt? What was going through your head then?
Yeah, I never, coaching college basketball was never a goal of mine. It was just being a math teacher and a basketball coach in the same neighborhood I grew up in, the same way my high school coach was. And through my high school coach, I ended up meeting a lot of the popular college basketball coaches that we all saw on TV for years and years and years. And because of him, I befriended some of these coaches. And then, as we got into the latter part of the 90s, the public school system started changing. I was not enjoying the structure of the classroom anymore. I'm a big rules guy. I'm a structure guy. I live life that way. I believe in them, and I need them for me to succeed. And I didn't like the direction that public schools were headed in, and which is a different conversation for a different day. And then I went through a difficult chapter with a principal, and and it's I'm not trying to avoid it. I just don't want to bore you with a story. It's public knowledge, and anyone that researches my past knows what I went through as a high school basketball coach from investigation standpoint. But at the end of the day, I kept my job. It's not like I lost my job. I was perfectly fine. We dealt with that moment, but it was at that time, this was the summer of 98. It was at that time that I first said, you know what? I need a change. I don't think I'm enjoying this public school teaching and the whole thing anymore. So I started pursuing college jobs, and that's where the whole writing everyone notes and Coach K being the one guy that wrote me back. And that was in the 98, 99 calendar year from an athletic standpoint. Then I stayed at high school for nothing. No one replied. And I stayed in high school for another year. And I was coaching high school basketball, and I was fine. I was happy. I just thought I needed to change. And then unbeknownst to me, the one time I was not chasing a job, I got a phone call. And it was an opportunity at Northeastern University. Charlton Young, who's an assistant at Florida State right now. Charlton was the assistant at Northeastern. Charlton's a Miami guy. And he told his boss, because they were recruiting our point guard, told his boss, like, I think if you offer Frank a job, he'll take it. And Rudy Keeling, may he rest in peace, called me and said, hey, created some conversation with me and said, hey, at the end of the day, I need to hire a new assistant. I want you to be that guy. And I took the job for $28,000. And away we went. And I've never looked back, and never been happier. And so it's my career professionally, teaching, basketball coaching, the whole thing, all the odd jobs that you spoke about before. I feel lucky that I've been so fortunate to ride the wave I've been riding and have the experiences that I've had.
Yeah, and I'm sure that maybe not so much with the X's and O's in basketball, but certainly that type of path shapes you as a person and really puts some grit in you as well. So 2000, assistant at Northeastern. That goes to 2004, 04 to 06, assistant coach at Cincinnati. And then 06, 07, you go to K-State, recruiting coordinator, assistant there as well. And, of course, the big name that you land is Michael Beasley. Bill Walker also, who I remember had a tremendous freshman season for you guys. You take over for Bob Huggins, who you were with at Cincinnati as well. I've heard that he was one of the guys that had maybe one of the most profound influences on your career. I'm curious your relationship with Coach Huggins and Well, what are some of the things that you use in your game that you got from him?
The most my high school coach is a lot like Hugs from what I'm getting ready to explain. But when you're new to college basketball, you're trying to fit in, and you're trying to figure out how to fit in. And when you end up with Hugs, who had been a friend for years, and then I actually end up working in the office right next door to him, you rapidly learn that the best way to fit in is be true to who you are, and don't get wrapped up in the politically correctness, phony world of cameras. Be true to who you are. You have a responsibility to the people that you coach, to the families that allow you to lead their children. That's who you need to make sure you're true to, make sure you're accountable to, and then he's got a little saying. I'm gonna give you the PG version of it, but answer the bell. And that's kind of the way I was raised, and that's why my connection to him was so powerful. Which I don't care what the circumstances are. You don't stay down. You get up and you answer the bell. And I know he does that, and I take a lot of pride in trying to do it myself.
It's a really cool story because you end up taking over for him. In 2007, 2008, you're the head coach at Kansas State, 4 trips to the NCAA Tournament, the Elite Eight in 09, 2010. Michael Beasley, of course, one of the top stars in the country at that time. You're having a ton of success at K-State, and then you decide to make the jump to South Carolina in 2012 there. Well, what was the reasoning when, things seemed to be going the right way at K-State that you decided to head over to Columbia?
Yeah, it's my wife and I, our daughter was my oldest son, Brandon's from a previous relationship, and he did not live with us at the time. And I had remarried, and my wife Anya and I had our first child together, Amalia, who was actually born right when I got to Cincinnati. And then Christian was born shortly after us being at K-State. So we were a young marriage with young children. And that last season, I was at K-State. My mother-in-law in New York was battling breast cancer. And we were so far away from home. And mother-in-law couldn't travel. It was really hard for my wife to travel with 2 young kids and me in the middle of the season. So it created in the back of my mind this thought process that I have a responsibility to family. I've got to figure out a way to get my wife closer to the grandparents, to her mom and my mom. My mom's in Miami, her mom's in New York, and I had a chapter in my life. I assume you've seen it where I didn't think I was going to make it, and God sent an angel to come in here and keep me around for a little longer. So my faith in God is something that, as I continued to go through life, has gotten stronger and more powerful for me. And I'm a big believer in science. And I had no interest, if I was going to leave Kansas, I had no interest in moving north. And my wife at the time had no interest in living in Florida. So going to live in Florida wasn't an option to keep my family happy. And I really had no interest in moving to the north if I was going to leave Kansas State. And long story short, I got a phone call. And because I was in a state of mind that, I might have to listen to some things to try and get my families closer together. And then Columbia, South Carolina was like equally distant from New York City, equally distant to Miami. And I was like, wow, it's not the North and it's not South Florida or whatever. It's kind of right in between. And then the one thing that attracted me was, this is a school that has had guys like Frank McGuire, Eddie Fogler, Dave Odom, very successful basketball coaches. Ray Tanner, who's my boss now, he's a Hall of Fame baseball coach. Don Staley was the basketball coach here. Steve Spurrier was the football coach. Lou Holtz had been the football coach here. I was like, if it's good enough for all them folks, God, why not go in there and try to fix a basketball program that had such a great history to it that unfortunately had just kind of, I don't want to say become irrelevant, but like wasn't talked about. And so I said, you know what? If you go back to my background, all the jobs you were talking about, I'm not scared of work. I'm not scared to fail. I don't take jobs because I'm concerned with the difficulties. And I thought it'd be pretty neat to try and build it from basically scratch here. And that's what we tried to do. And, you know, when I left K-State in 2010, I left in 2012, but in 2010, we had the best season in the history of the school. And the 5 years I was there was the winningest 5-year period in the history of the school. Then I come here and, you know, people can argue whatever needs to be argued. The 2 winningest seasons in the history of the school happened under my watch. And before this past COVID year, the previous 6-year window was the winningest 6-year period since the 70s at the school. So it's, you know, it's been pretty neat to go through and rebuild this program and create one that we've done it in an ethical way with a lot of core responsibilities and core values, and really, really proud that I made the decision I made when I made it.
So 2012, you're named the 32nd head coach at South Carolina, 153 wins in 9 seasons so far. 2015, 2016 really looks like the big step forward. 25-9, double-digit SEC wins, 4th time in program history. And then 2017, of course, that's the year everyone talks about, 26 wins. Guys like Thornwell and Silva and Dozier. But I mean, that team had so much depth in there with Rakeem Felder and Dwayne Notice and Justin Mackey, Mike Kotsar just starting out. NCAA Tournament appearance for the first time since 2004, first tourney win since 1973, and of course, South Carolina's first trip to the Final Four in program history. A 77-73 loss to Gonzaga. And I was there covering it in Phoenix. I remember it like it was yesterday. The big story the day before was Sindarius getting sick. I'm curious what the full story is there, because I won't put words into your mouth, but I truly believe, and that's not taking anything away from the Zags, but in my opinion, I think you guys were the better team if everyone's fully healthy. And I believe that if Sin was healthy, that you guys end up winning that game. So is that me overstepping, or was Sindarius truly that sick that it impacted the performance?
I'll leave the if and all that for the fans and for yourself. If I weighed what I weighed back in 1993, I'd probably would go in the stands and take my shirt off in front of people, but I don't. So I try to keep the decisions I make based on the reality of the moment right now. But no, Sindarius was really sick, and he wasn't sick at the game. When the plane took off on a Tuesday and flying across the country, and we're up in the air, my trainer came up to me on the plane and said, "Hey, Sindarius ain't feeling well. I don't think we have to land," because we had doctors on the plane, but he's not feeling good. And we landed and had the flu. He had temperature, fever, isolated from the team, bedridden, IVs in him, the whole thing. He couldn't eat. He was beat up pretty good Tuesday night, all day Wednesday. Was still feeling a little better, but still beat up on Thursday. The fever broke Thursday night, and that's for doctors and trainers. When the fever breaks, then you're allowed to be around other people, and you're allowed to do some physical things. So Friday was the first day that he was allowed to kind of get out of his room and get around the rest of us. And we had him at practice on Friday, and he practiced it. He hadn't really eaten other than IVs and fluids for the better part of the week. And then on game day Saturday, he felt good, but unfortunately, if you look at the first half and the second half, in respect to him, he just didn't have the same oomph in the first half that he had in the second half. And could that have made a difference? Probably. But that goes back to the bottom line with, what I looked like in 1993 compared to what I look like today. Here, we'll leave it. Let's keep my shirt on. If I still had hair, I'd part it down the middle, but unfortunately, I don't. So I gotta get used to this bald, this beautiful stuff here that people talk about.
You're selling yourself short. You still look pretty good there, Coach. How many comments do you get on the baldness these days?
People still look at me kind of weird because I had some good hair, man. I really enjoyed my hair, and I enjoyed greasing, gelling it back, and every once in a while cutting it real short, and going from really enjoying my hair to getting used to what people look at me. I can tell when they haven't seen me in a while, they're looking at me like, why'd you cut your hair? But it's all good. It's all good. I'll get used to it eventually.
The last thing I want to ask you about the Final Four game, and this is something that also sticks out in my mind, and I've seen it in other scenarios, but anytime there's a big basketball game in a larger than normal arena, and in this case, a football stadium, depth perception seems like such a big factor. When you guys practice in a basketball gym, you play in a basketball arena for the better part of the season, and then all of a sudden the backboard is 100 feet or so away from the wall. How much does that impact shooters as you're getting ready when you only have like a day or two of practicing on that court?
Yeah, it's a big difference. It's I don't care how much you tell people, like, hey, it's basket's 10 feet high and it's 15 feet from the foul line from, what we call the nail. All that sounds good. Bottom line is that court is a stage. It's the first time in all our careers that we had to walk up steps to get onto a court. And then the bottom line is 78,000 people in that stadium to watch us play. It's, Gonzaga was under the same situation. It was their first Final Four. And so, it's a different vibe, but we're all athletes, coaches. The one thing we've been trained to do is adapt in a hurry. Because if Saban had one of the greatest lines of all time the other day. He said the dinosaurs didn't adapt. Look what happened to them. And and as coaches and as athletes, we're constantly adapting. It's you adapt during the course of a game to shooting well, not shooting well, to how the other team plays, to injury, to foul trouble, whatever. You're constantly adapting, and but it's playing on that stage. Because it is a stage, and 78,000 people in the stands, that's a different vibe. And I tell people all the time, when I started walking up the steps, I was so nervous I was going to trip and fall. That would have been embarrassing. But that's all I can think about as I was going up those steps.
Yeah, it was, I think certainly for shooters, I can't imagine it. Even if you played pickup basketball, you can tell the difference in your depth perception there. You lose a ton of talent from that team. 17 and 16 in 2017, 16 wins in 2018, 18 in 2019, and then COVID hits before you take the floor at the SEC tournament. For those that don't remember, the NBA suspended the season on March 11th, 2020, after Rudy Gobert's positive test. Everything kind of snowballs after. And that was really like a 36-hour swing for you personally, taking it, from what happens nationally to how it impacted you there at the SEC tournament in Nashville. One of the most surreal moments of your career. I'm assuming something that'll never leave you.
Yeah, it was complicated. It's, we're talking about, we went off the Final Four and we had seniors, and then PJ Dozier announced that he was going to declare for the NBA, which is a decision I fully supported. And then we had the two guards that we had in place that we thought were going to replace those guys, left our team for different reasons in the ensuing year and a half. So we were trying to redo our team while sustaining winning. We did that. That first year after the Final Four, we survived. It wasn't pretty early, but we became pretty good by the end of the year. And then we kind of started growing into being a winning team again and won double-figure games that following year in conference play. And then we followed that up with 18 wins and excited about who we were from a possibility of being in an NCAA tournament at large team if we didn't win the conference tournament. And we were in the arena watching the Vanderbilt Arkansas game. And we played the winner the following day, and we had beaten both teams. So there was an excitement that if we can win one more game, our numbers were good enough where we're going to be a shoo-in into the NCAA tournament. That we're sitting in the arena when the whole Rudy Gobert story hit, and went back to the hotel that night, and then the national story started growing from that moment. And then I got a call early the next morning on game day from my boss, and he said, "Hey, there's an emergency meeting. This isn't looking good." I got a call about 2 hours later, said, "Get the team together, pack your bags, head back to campus." And it was a weird feeling, really complicated. There's no way to determine how your season ends and when it ends, and to have it end that way was difficult. And then we got to campus, and 24 hours later, everybody was gone, and we didn't see each other for 6 months. So that was an interesting 6, 7, 8 month window of our lives. And it's like everything else. I hope it's something that I know it taught us valuable lessons. I hope it taught everyone else too.
And then you have to get right back to it for the 2020 season, 6-15. It's known as the COVID year. Of course, we're still not out of the woods with this year set to tip off soon. Multiple stoppages due to COVID. You can't practice. You can't be around each other. Basketball coaches, creatures of habit here. And, those with your level of success certainly are. You mentioned adapting earlier. How hard was it to adapt to such differences during the 2020 season where, you really can't even be around your guys? And you mentioned that's your safe place. That's where you feel at peace. I have to imagine at some level, you felt like that was taken from you a little bit.
Absolutely. That was complicated. I talked earlier about reflection and looking back. And as I looked back into all the major decisions I made into trying to prepare for this season, I don't think I made many good decisions. And I was just making decisions based on the moment, not on experience. I'd never dealt with a pandemic. I'd never dealt with a lot of the things that we were forced to deal with. And I think my greatest strength in leading is my willingness to build unbelievable relationships with the people that I lead and being transparent with them and connecting with them. Well, the way the whole COVID environment was created for us to try and make it work, it was all about separation. And so I handled things the way I thought would work. But when I look backwards, I don't think any of my decisions worked. And it's, I wish I can give you a nicer, better sounding answer here, but that's as honest as I can be as to my inability to connect with making the proper decisions for the season. And then the season starts and we play 3 games and bam, there it goes. And then it just, for 7 weeks, and the thing is that everyone says, well, it's not like your whole team tests positive the same week, so as soon as we had 2 guys test positive, they shut us all down because of exposure. The policies on our campus, every campus is different. The policies on our campus is any student that tested positive, if they were not in their isolation or quarantine room, you would be suspended for a whole semester. That would be a problem. So our players had to be on lockdown. And they couldn't come out to go for a walk, even if they were not positive, if they were just quarantined because of exposure and they were still testing negative, they couldn't come out. They had to stay in their apartments. And And so for 7 weeks, we had a total of 5 practices, played 2 games over a 7-week period. Other than that, there was nothing else. And then by the time we regrouped, it was just difficult. And then it was hard to win. We won a couple games when we got back. We beat Florida A&M in a really hard game, and then we beat Texas A&M 2 days later, and then we got shut down again. And then we traveled to LSU on 1 practice, minus a player, minus me, minus our associate head coach, and got beat at LSU. And then we all finally reconvened. I want to say it was January 18th. Then we finally all reconvened again for the first time on January 19th, and away we went. And we tried. We made adjustments to how we play to try and fit into this team and the inability to practice, and it was just hard. We play in a really hard conference. We played some teams that dealt with disruption the previous summer when they got to campus, but had not dealt with disruption in the middle of the season. And those are not excuses; those are facts. And we, because of our path, were just not good enough to go win some of these games. And then as the season went on, eventually our confidence broke. We lost confidence in our ability to win games. And when that happens, you got no chance. And in the last probably 3 weeks of the season, that's kind of what we tried to battle. And it was unfortunate because we never regained it.
And again, the amount of things that you have to juggle during this era, it's, keeping players healthy first and foremost, but also keeping competitive balance, not just in games, but in practices. That's a tough thing to handle there. Before, we're getting set to wrap up here, but I want to touch on some of your stuff off the court as well. 270 wins in 14 seasons as a head coach. That's what everybody sees. Inducted into the Naismith Coaches Circle at the Hall of Fame in 2019. To impact their communities, players, and society in a positive manner. And some of the things you do, you host a basketball event in the South every single year, raising money to benefit Coaches vs. Cancer initiative. You consistently have your team at a cumulative GPA at 3.0 or higher, which I'm sure you take a lot of pride on as a former educator yourself. And, for lack of a better term, you're still an educator. You've always made a point of being active in community, and you've certainly done that in the Palmetto State. Why has that been such a focus for you wherever you've been? And, regardless of all the winning on the basketball court, I'm assuming that ranks right up there, all those things I just mentioned, things that you're proud of.
Well, it's a twofold answer. Number one, personally, it's important for my wife, my children, my family to not be judged as the relatives of a basketball coach. I want them to be judged as a member of this community. And if the only thing I do is coach basketball around here, then I can't get upset when people judge my whole family as just the basketball coach's wife or son or whatever. So I have a sense of responsibility to my family, and it's the way I was raised. Secondly, professionally, I have a responsibility to set an example to the young men I coach as to the responsibilities of a man. I ask them to do all when they sign up to play college basketball, they're signing up for the whole thing, not just the basketball part, the academics, the staying out of trouble. I don't care what anyone says. Athletes have to circumvent their social life because they get judged differently than the average student. They can't do the same thing the average student does on a college campus. So they're giving up certain things in their life to be a college athlete. And so I've got to do that too. I've got to show them. I believe in education. It's the only reason I found success in my life is education. And so I believe in education. I think a big part of education is preparing young people for life. We talked about Bob Huggins earlier. He used to always ask me, why do people go to college? And I'd always give him an answer. And whatever I said, he always said wrong answer. So finally I said to him, why do you always ask me that question? He says, I can't believe that somebody as smart as you, Frank, can't figure out that people go to college for one reason and one reason only, to make a better life. And to make a better life, that means, okay, so that people go to college to find success. Well, if you find success and you think it's all about you, you're going to fail. You're going to be lonely in that journey and lonely in that moment. So I believe in being philanthropic, giving of my time, giving of my money when I can. And well, it's important that I show players that by when they're in their shoes, teaching them how to be philanthropic. They don't have money to give at that time, but they have their time to give. So teaching them how to be philanthropic with their time, so the day that they find success, it's something that's a part of who they are. So all those are the reasons why, when you describe all the different things that you mentioned, I take pride in trying to be a representative of all those things, to lead my players and to make sure that this community judges my family as the family, the Martin family that lives in Columbia, and not Frank Martin's wife and children, who's the basketball coach at the university.
Coach, final question for me. Yours is one of the more remarkable stories out there, and you got years to add to this long resume, but there could be some youngsters watching this right now who potentially maybe want to get into coaching or something of the like. What's the message you'd want them to take from your story as somebody who has persevered through so much?
Yeah, that the opportunities are there. They're not a whole lot of them. So you got to keep your head down. You got to be loyal. Got to be honest. Don't coach. Don't pursue the dollar bill. If you chase the money, you're going to be unhappy, because there's not a lot of money for a lot of people in this business. And if you ever end up with one of the jobs that does pay you a good salary financially, be humble enough to understand that the easiest thing in life is to be replaced, so that you can be replaced at any moment. So you comprehend that you got to have a sense of urgency and responsibility to keep your job. And there's no guarantee that job will ever be given to you, or that you can keep your job. But the one thing that I think every young person needs to understand is, when you choose coaching as a profession, you're going to get rich by the people that come across your life. You're going to get rich because of the joy that you have when you see others find success and grow as human beings. And as long as you keep your mind in that place, and your enthusiasm and your energies in that place, coaching can be something you can do for the rest of your life. And, but just be patient, be honest. And then the last thing, which I think works for any career, do the job you're hired to do. Don't do someone else's job, and don't try to get another job without doing the job you were hired to do.
Pretty good advice for anybody watching that. It's the head coach of the South Carolina Gamecocks, Frank Martin. First game just a few weeks away. You said you're starting to chomp at the bit here a little bit, as football is on the way as well. But don't sleep on the Gamecocks basketball team as well. Exhibition against Benedict on November 4th, and then the season is off and rolling. Frank Martin gets set for basketball season number 36, and perhaps many more after it. Coach, appreciate the time more than you know. Thanks so much.
Appreciate it. Always great to visit, and great seeing you again.
As head coach Frank Martin, I want to thank you for joining us here for In Depth with Fox Carolina Sports as well. We got another great episode for you next week. Have a great one.